Mighty gracious.
She will retain the beer conclave.
We don't have a problem with that.
Excellent.
Ever since the debut of Sweet Magnolias back in May of last year, the series has gone on to become one of the flagship dramas of the Netflix streaming platform. So it won't surprise you to hear that Season 2 is highly anticipated. But what do we really have to look forward to when the new installment comes around? The renewal of Sweet Magnolias. Well, before we get too excited about the future, let's take a look at whether a second installment of the show has actually been confirmed or not. Remember, the onset of the coronavirus pandemic has really thrown a fork in the works. Not only has it jammed up the filming industry to a large extent in the form of a number of delays, it's also resulted in more job losses than we can count. And as it turns out, this hasn't been great for the budgets of the networks and streaming platforms alike. Rather than relying on an estimated budget, which is what a platform such as Netflix used to do in the past, the performance of a show is now directly linked to whether or not it will receive a renewal in the future. As such, performance analysts on the Netflix payroll bring the statistics of a show to the attention of the higher-ups, who then make the decision on whether a series deserves a renewal. It doesn't seem to matter how popular a show is either, with even Bridgerton fans having to wait around a month before their favorite series was renewed for a second season. In other words, fans of Sweet Magnolias weren't too stressed when a couple of weeks went by without any mention being made of a second installment on the horizon. We knew that the showrunner has more to say. After all, especially considering the cliffhanger ending of the first installment. And as we mentioned earlier, this new method of handling renewals has become commonplace now. In the summer of last year, fans were finally given the announcement that they had been waiting for. Just 2 months after the initial release of the season, Sweet Magnolias was confirmed for a second installment, showing just how much of a flagship Netflix title had become in such a short time. But when we can expect to sink our teeth into the newest season is a completely different story altogether. The release date of Season 2. Once again, we can't even mention the anticipated release date of the show without first confirming that the spread of COVID-19 may have had a pretty drastic effect on when we can expect its newest season to drop. The days of early release dates are gone, an unfortunate byproduct of the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, which essentially led to a number of sets having to shut down in accordance with governmental regulations. And when cast and crew members were finally able to return to these sets, it goes without saying that not everything was back to normal. New safety precautions needed to be adhered to in an effort to curb the spread of the virus, causing even more delays throughout the runtime of the production. This had an effect which ended up snowballing, causing a vast number of shows to not be able to meet the release dates that had been announced prior to COVID becoming a problem. So to the disappointment of fans, these release dates were postponed in the hope that post-production would be able to meet the next indicated date. Finally, streaming platforms and networks alike made the decision to remove the concept of a year-long release date, instead choosing to announce a date when both filming and post-production of a series had wrapped, leaving no space for further delays. In other words, the fact that the release date of Season 2 has not yet been announced is expected. What we can tell you, though, is that the filming of the newest installment is already complete, a fact that was confirmed by Joanna Garcia back in July of this year, when she posted all about it on her official Instagram page. And who better to inform us about the progress of the installment than the leading lady herself? In her own words, she went on to caption the post with the following sweet remarks about the wrapping of filming. Bittersweet feelings because I'm going to miss this group so much, but I'm so proud and excited for all of you to see what you've been cooking up in Serenity, and can't wait for this dream team of a cast and crew to hopefully be reunited ASAP to continue the journey. Do we smell a Season 3 in the works already? Well, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's think about what this means for when we can actually expect to see Season 2 of Sweet Magnolias on our Netflix trending page. Considering how the show only needs to wrap up with post-production, and since not many visual effects needed to be added in post, we can probably expect Season 2 to drop sometime in June of 2022 at the very latest. That being said, it could very well be a lot earlier than this. Either way, we simply cannot wait for Season 2 to finally answer those burning questions that the first installment left us with. The cast of Season 2. As to who we can expect to show up in the second installment, we doubt there will be any surprises in store for us. First of all, there's no doubt that Joanna Garcia will be reprising her role of Maddie Townsend. She's the leading lady of the franchise after all, and seems to know far too much about the wrapping of filming to not be involved in the entirety of the season. We can also expect the return of her best friends and completing components of the Sweet Magnolias. We are, of course, referring to none other than Heather Headley as Helen Decatur and Brooke Elliott as Dana Sue Sullivan. Without these three ladies, there's no longer a point to the show being called Sweet Magnolias after all, and it goes without saying that the showrunner has a lot more to cover when it comes to each lady's progressive story arc. Some other returning names of importance include Chris Klein as Bill Townsend, Justin Bruning as Cal Maddox, Carson Rowland as Tyler Townsend, Logan Allen as Kyle Townsend, and Annalise Judge as Annie Sullivan. Fans of the show will also be impressed to discover that Jamie Lynn Spears, who portrays the role of Noreen Fitzgibbons, has actually been promoted to series regular. Other newly appointed regulars include Dion Johnstone, who portrays Chef Eric, and Brandon Quinn, who brings the role of Dana Sue's estranged husband Ronnie to life. Last but not least, reports have also indicated that there are a bunch of new faces that fans of the show will have to get used to when it comes to the second installment. When asked about the future of Serenity, Anderson responded by stating that there are some thoughts in place about new citizens of the town, along with others regarding new alliances between existing members of Serenity. Unfortunately for us, though, we have absolutely no idea who these new faces will be or who will be playing them. We don't even know if this statement will come into play in the second installment, as the showrunner clearly has 3 to 4 seasons of the series already planned out. That being said, what can we actually expect from the plot of the second installment? The plot of Season 2. Although nothing has been confirmed just yet, there's no doubt that Season 2 is going to be expanding on the cliffhanger of a car crash that we saw at the end of its first installment. For those of you who have forgotten by now, there are a couple things that could be taken from the intense season finale. For one, Helen has finally broken up with her boyfriend Ryan, and after realizing that he's never going to change his mind about wanting kids in the future, there's no doubt that this was the correct decision for Helen to make. But with so much going on, it's highly probable that she won't be getting the support she so desperately needs right now. Remember, she was head over heels in love with Ryan, and it's not like they decided to split because they no longer felt for each other. They just ended up growing apart because of a specific deviation in their life plan. And with the car accident in question gumming up the works, she'll likely keep the majority of her feelings to herself, resulting in some or other mental break. We also see some other breakups that will likely be explored in the upcoming installment. Not only does Dana Sue end things with her estranged husband, she does so because she desperately needs money for her restaurant after the withdrawal of her #1 investor. Maddie also ends things with Cal, believing that he isn't the greatest of influences on her son, who he has been encouraging to skip college in an attempt to make it big on the basketball scene. Even Noreen ends up breaking up with Maddie's ex-husband Bill due to the fact that he doesn't consider her needs. Suffice to say, there'll be a lot of space in Season 2 for the development of these characters, all of whom have a lot of growing to do if they want to find love again. But that being said, let's get to the final plot point that fans have been waiting a full year to explore. We are, of course, talking about that infamous car crash that involved Kyle and an unnamed passenger at the very end of the season finale. Fans have been trying to figure out who the other victim in the passenger seat was for quite some time now, with quite a few theories being thrown around. If the passenger was Annie, who we saw following Kyle after his brother Tyler pushed him away, there's no doubt that this will be creating some tension between the Sweet Magnolias. Mothers can get pretty vindictive when the safety of their children is in question after all. Another theory is that the passenger is none other than Tyler, which has its own complications. A crash like this could seriously endanger his dream of playing baseball professionally, but that's dependent on whether he was the actual unnamed passenger. Either way, we'll have to see what the showrunner ends up going with when Season 2 finally hits our screens.